So I'm going to turn on the power to the controller, that battery pack and controller box that is attached to the focus motor. And now I'm going to launch my app, ClickRT. This button here says link, so I'll hit that. It shows any Bluetooth enabled devices nearby. I know mine is SRT 1002, so I'll click that to connect. And now SRT 1002 is written in this box that originally said link, and it's now blue instead of red. The next thing that I'm going to do is set my limits. And this is basically the range of movement that will be allowed. In a lot of cases, you'll set one limit as infinity and the other limit as the closest focus of the lens. But you might not always want to do that. If you know you're only going to be setting focus points, say between 3 and 5 meters, you could set 5 meters as the infinite n and 3 meters as the close or zero n, and then the entire range of movement would be mapped onto those within those endpoints. There's also a button, a checkbox down here at the bottom that says reverse. This depends on which way the motor is attached to the camera. In this early version, and this may be changed in the final version, forward would be when the motor is on this side of the lens, hanging ahead of the lens. Reverse is this position that we've got it in now, on the handle side of the camera body, with the motor going away from the camera body out towards the end of the lens, or with the bracket on this side and the motor hanging back next to the camera body. So because I've got one of those two positions, I'm going to use reverse before setting my limits. The next thing I'm going to do is tap this button that says limit. The button's now blue. In red here is a box that says infinity and a box here that says 0. And these boxes here with arrows allow me to move the motor to get the lens to, in this case I'm going to be setting infinity first. So I'll try one of these buttons. This is the correct direction, I think, to go to infinity. You'll notice that the lens is moving very slowly now. And I'm sure a lot of people will suggest that we make it move faster. But this is based on experience. If you run it past the end and hit the hard stop on the lens, then these gears can run over teeth, or the motor can miss steps, and then the controller doesn't know where it is, and you have to start all over. And that's actually more frustrating than waiting for this to move slowly. So now that I am just almost at infinity here, I'll click this to indicate that that this is the right position. It remembers this is infinity, and now this 0 button is red, and it wants me to show it where the near end of the lens is. So once again, moving very slowly back in the direction of 0. And if I was interested in just a very short range of focal points, I could make this a shorter distance. And just to be brief, let's say two feet or 0.6 meters. That will be my near end. So I hit 0, and now my limits are set. If I forgot to do the reverse, and upon moving it realized that I had screwed up and want to go the other way, you can just arbitrarily set a near and far limit, and at this point I could redo the check, and limit is red, so I could hit it again and reset my limits. But for now this is okay. There are, above the arrow buttons, there are 3 buttons that say A, B, C, D, free, and set A, B, C, D. Free allows me to use the arrows to freely move the lens around. And in order to check my limits, I'll do that. Having hit the button, it's now green, and my arrow buttons are red, indicating that they're active. And I have a fast speed, the outer buttons, and slow speed, the inner buttons. And I can hit one limit, and then the other. They seem to be where I wanted them to be. So now I can actually set up pre-programmed focus points. I can have up to 4, but I don't necessarily need to set all 4. Say I want to do the most common focus shift is just an A to B move, where focus is at one point at the beginning of the shot, and at some point in the scene I want to shift focus to another fixed point. An A-B move. I'll go to set A, B, C, D. Now these buttons, A, B, C, and D, are red, and they say A, B, C, D in them, as are my arrow buttons. I'm just going to use the arrows to move to a point that I'll call A. If this is where I want to start my shot, I'll hit A. And now I'll move to another point where I want to shift focus to, and that will be B. And I could go on and set 2 more programmed focus points, but for right now, this is enough. I'll now go to A, B, C, D. The arrow buttons are gray, meaning they're not active. A, B, C, and D are red, indicating that they are active. And there are 2 check boxes here, speed and time. And those let me decide how fast I'm going to move from A to B. And if you start using it this way, I've found that the time interface is the most intuitive. It just lets me specify the amount of time that it's going to take to shift from A to B. And there are 2 buttons here. One says second and one says tenth. So if I hit second, I now have numbers along this side, and I'll just pick 1 second. And then there are tenths here. So I'll pick 5. So I've got 1 second and 5 tenths. So this should take 1.5 seconds to move from A to B or B to A. So if I hit a button, we can see it moved slowly. Took about 1.5 seconds to move back to the start point, which was A. That's now green, telling me that that's the current position. If I hit B, B turns green, and the motor rolls to B, taking about 1.5 seconds to do it. Let's say I would rather do this faster. I can go to second. I'll choose 0. And I'll leave tenths the way it is. So now it should return from B back to A in 1/2 second when I hit A. And I can see that that's considerably faster than it was. As a matter of fact, it's exactly 3 times faster than the way I had set it previously. Now let's say I want to make a different shot where I want 4 pre-programmed focus points. I'll go back to set A, B, C, D. I'll use the buttons to move to my A position, which in this case will be infinity. And I'll hit A. That's now green, telling me that I've now set that. I'll move up a little bit more and select B. That's now green, telling me I've now programmed B position. I'll move up a little bit more, program C, and much closer, I'll program D. Now, if I go to A, B, C, D, all 4 are programmed. No matter which of these I hit, it's going to try to make the move in 1/2 second. So if I go from D to C, a short range, it's relatively slow. But if I go all the way back to A, the speed is a bit more because it's trying to travel that distance in 1/2 second. If I wanted the speed to always be the same between the focus points, I could go to this check mark here where it says speed, and I could set myself a speed in relatively arbitrary numbers, but doubling the number will double your speed. And I now am at 5. And these are relatively rapid movements, although I can program it to go much faster. Say 7. Now the focus shifts are nearly instantaneous. And the speed that it's traveling, regardless of a short distance or a long distance, is always going to be the same.